Do you really believe your own hype that much?
I am the hype!
Yo, what is going on? Thank you so much for joining in. So, I finally read The Blade itself, and it's not what I expected. Let me explain. So when taking a stroll through any bookstore within the fantasy aisle, or watching any booktube content that delves into the fantasy genre, one name continually pops up, with that being Joe Abercrombie. Why was this name always popping up, and also somebody that's being hailed as the master of the grimdark subgenre of fantasy? Are his books really that good that they're essential fantasy reads? Is Joe Abercrombie a Abercrombie & Fitch model?
Wow!
Well, I didn't know because I haven't read any Joe Abercrombie just yet, so I said, you know what, it's time to change that and finally read the first law, with the first book being The Blade itself. So, does it live up to the hype? Well, let's dive into it and find out. Now, this is a series that was on a mountain of expectations from me due to the tremendous amount of hype surrounding it. Reviewers, booktubers, and basically anyone else who can read was recommending Joe Abercrombie to me. Even my dad one day tells me,
"Son, have you heard of this Abercrombie fellow? I think you should read his books."
My dad, I mean, granted, both of us read in the fantasy genre, so this is probably going to happen at some point, but it actually happened. So obviously, I came into The Blade itself with super high expectations. I mean, how can I not? And in my brain, this hype level was similar to when Star Wars The Force Awakens was first revealed in terms of its first trailer, where everyone was super excited to see what was going to happen. I mean, this book even has 250,000 ratings on Goodreads. I mean, nothing can go wrong, right?
Wrong!
Now that I've finished The Blade itself, to answer the million-dollar question, did it live up to the hype? No. No, it did not. So before I dive into the actual review of this book, I want to preface this with saying that I listened to the audiobook version of this book that had a fantastic narrator being Stephen Pacey. His narration really brought to life a lot of the characters within this story. It really helped build tension in a lot of scenes within this narrative. Now, don't get me wrong, I did have a positive experience reading this book, but it was a potential DNF, or do not finish, up until around the 60% mark within this story. I kept saying to myself,
man, Joe Abercrombie must not be for me.
Which was really disappointing because I had such high hopes. I knew I had to at least finish the story. Because of the overall positive reception found in tons and tons of people, I wanted to see it for myself. Now, there are a few reasons why the story did not click with me right from the get-go. Yes, there was fantastic world building. Most of the characters were pretty interesting. Glocta's introspection was super humorous, but I kept asking, when is something going to happen? Usually, I'm a huge fan of slow burn stories as long as something is keeping my interest throughout the read and if there's a huge payoff towards the tail end of the story. The Blade itself certainly has an ending that's worth the slow burn read, but I can tell you that my interest was definitely waning for about the first 60% of this story. So, one of my biggest highlights in the story for me was the characters, which is probably similar to a lot of people as well. Now, they were all mostly interesting, but there was two standouts for me, being Sandan Glocta and Bayaz. You might be saying, whoa, what about Logan Ninefingers? Well, for me, I was a little bit indifferent towards this character until about the last couple of pages of his arc within this story. Glocta's introspection was absolutely hilarious and so much fun to listen to, and I really think it's the main reason why I kept chugging along within the story. This is a character that is flawed, has a very interesting history, very entertaining tasks, and the narrator makes him even more hilarious by really adding a voice that sounds like he's actually missing teeth. Glocta has several witty remarks and thoughts that just made his whole entire story of joy to read through. Bayaz was particularly interesting to me because he's not typically what you think of when you initially think of a wise old wizard. To be honest, I had no idea there was even a magic element found within the story before I found out that Bayaz was a wizard. I believe Bayaz is a perfect character to deliver this magical element within the story because the world in the story is just grim and bleak, and Bayaz himself is grim and bleak with a pinch of humor. Now, Logan I thought was pretty interesting, but I wasn't really hooked until a chapter named The Bloody Nine, which for you guys who have read this, you might know this is the second to last chapter within this story. To me, Logan was a big brooding dude standing in the background who was just simply just there. So why was he there? I mean, Logan doesn't even really know either. Then in the second to last chapter, we get that chapter called The Bloody Nine, where we get to see why he has that nickname. And I loved it. And if you read this book, you probably know exactly the chapter I'm referencing to, so fantastic chapter. Now again, most of the characters were pretty interesting, but the story really gripped me from when these characters came together and converged. This was definitely the turning point for me, as these scenes were just hilarious, tense and full of fantastic dialogue, and just overall a lot of fun to read through. There was a particular scene that involved a very mysterious tower that involved the majority of all of our characters. It was just hilarious to see the unique perspectives or POVs from each of these characters all venturing to this tower together. Now, another problem that I had within the story was from any female POVs. There was a certain female POV introduced into like the later half of the story that I had no connection to throughout my entire read through this book. I understand that there is some significance here, and I hope that's expanded upon in book number 2. The best way that I can describe this book is that it's a stepping stone into hopefully a larger universe that is more and more expansive, with even more and more great characters and great dialogue and more tense scenes. And I've even heard book number 2 or book number 3 as one of the best duel scenes ever written, so obviously I'm excited for that. So overall, I'm very happy that I did finish the story, as there were many things to take away from this read, like mostly excellent characters, fantastic prose, great world building, and humor from all angles. Did it live up to the mountain of hype that I was expecting? No, but I'm excited to see where it goes. So what were your initial thoughts when reading the Blade itself? Did you have a similar stance to me? Let me know down below, but for sticking around this long, you've earned 1 XP token, and if you're already a subscriber, you get an extra XP token, so here you go. Have a good one, keep reading, peace.